Well, let's get you even closer here. Well, welcome back to our channel. My name's Brian. This is my wife and I's channel about building our house, our new house and barn and garage and various other projects. On my last video, I asked the question if anybody wanted me to do a specific how-to video on how I go about sawing logs and the setup and whatever entails getting material out, square material out of round stuff. So this is my attempt at putting a video together for those of you who are interested. I'm sure there's a lot to it. I'm sure I'm gonna forget stuff, but I'll try my best, and I'm sure I'm gonna have to edit out sections and anyway, so stick with me and we'll go through the process and saw a few logs, and there you have it. So let's start out with a sawmill. Let me get this thing situated here. I am sawing on a Woodmizer LT40 hydraulic sawmill. But for 19 years I had a LT40 non-hydraulic. So the bells and whistles on this mill, you don't necessarily need them to saw. And you don't, I mean, an Alaskan sawmill doesn't have any of this stuff. So and then there are other brands out there, and I'm not pushing one brand over another because I really only have experience with this this brand. So anyway, we're going to go through some of the stuff on the mill just as a precursor to how the logs let's see, this is how I'm trying to extract stuff from my brain to spout it out so you guys can understand what I'm thinking. Anyway, the mill is designed to handle logs, and that's what we're going to go through, is try to explain how most portable band sawmills are set up. So let me collapse these legs on this tripod. I'll be right back. All right, most mills have some way to get the log up onto the deck, the platform here. And my old mill had ramps and a cable operated system. Some people build a deck out here where they can just roll them directly onto the mill. This mill is nice. It has hydraulic arms that will, as you saw, just load the logs right on. And that's very, very handy. And some mills have a way to flip the log, and this one has this claw here. My old manual mill had something similar too, and they also have some way of clamping the log in place. Let's go around to the other side. So this mill has what's called a cantilevered head. This is the cutting head, which is a big band on two wheels, and it runs on two rails, one on top and bottom of this main tube. But there are a lot of other mills that have two tracks out there, and even Woodmizer produces a mill that has two tracks. So this isn't supposed to be a video about sawmills necessarily, but so anyway, that's what we're working with. So let's talk about trees. The trees, all trees have some kind of a taper, and you can see the taper at the butt end down here, or the butt swells out. This is where it was cut off of the stump, and this is the oldest part of the tree. when I was young, I was in school and people thought, there was a question asked, well, if the limb is at 3 feet when it's 4 years old, how far off the ground will that limb be when the tree is 20 years old? Well, the limbs don't travel up the tree. It's the leader of at the top of the tree, which continues to grow higher and higher and higher, and the branches all stay at the same level, and they just keep sprouting more branches out. So this is the oldest part of the tree, and when you're cutting trees, you should cut them as close as you can to the stump, because this is where the clearest and best most volume is. If you cut off a foot because it's more convenient to cut it up higher, you've just lost, I don't know how many board feet at the bottom. So I would recommend, if you're cutting trees, to try to cut them as low as you can, because that is going to be the best material you're going to find in the entire tree. And what a waste to throw that away and just leave it on the stump. So all trees have a taper, and then the taper also can be generalized as being different for different species of trees. And if you deal with log rules, or when you're scaling, there are different log rules: International 1/4 inch rule, Doyle, Scribner, and there are various others, and they were developed in regions that dealt with species that had different kinds of tapers, and they calculated the volumes according to that. Around here, as a general rule, people are using the International 1/4 inch rule, and that rule takes into the tapers generally found in species in New England. So all trees have a taper, and you're trying to get something you're trying to get a square something out of this tapered cylinder. Most mills come with these toe boards, and on my old mill, these were manual, and you cranked them up and they adjusted the log up or down. So that what you're attempting to do is to get the pith. The pith is actually off center in this tree. If the pith was in the center here, trying to get the center of the tree at the base and up here the same distance off of the beds. So if you can imagine it, imaginary horizontal line running through the tree, and the cone shape of the log is down, you want to raise this end up so that imaginary horizontal line is parallel with the bed and parallel with the travel of the blade. And what that's going to allow you to do is to take equal amounts of the taper or butt swell off of each side of the log. Otherwise, if you don't do that, as you can see, it's hitting here and it hits down there. That means that I'm going to take a little bit off here, if I don't change anything, a little bit off here and a whole bunch off of down here. And like I was saying before, this is where all the best, clearest wood is, at the base of the log. So I want to try and take an equal amount off of here as off of the bottom. So you can accomplish that by raising this up with a toe board and getting that imaginary center line parallel with the bed. There was something else I was going to say, and of course I've forgotten what it was. Anyway, so that's what you're trying to attempt to do with the toe boards, is to get this set up on here. Oh, what I was going to mention was, for me, it's preferable to saw with the butt end down at the far end of the mill, because if you can get what you want to get out of this end of the log, that end continually gets bigger, so you'll know you're going to be able to get it out down there. But if the log is flipped around and you got the butt end down here, it can be hard to judge from here to there because it gets smaller. Anyways, that's if you have logs delivered, I would suggest that you try to get them on the mill, decked up, so that the mill is set up so they come on with the small end of the log, the upper end of the log facing the head saw. All right, let's go down here since we can see a little bit better. Now this log is pretty good. It does not have much of any kind of a taper, any kind of a sweep. So that's pretty good. It is a little bit down at the top, and generally speaking, that's a pretty good log. But if you look at this log here, it's got a huge taper, and there's no way you can get, I could get something straight out of it, but it would be just a tiny thing and it would be wasting a lot of material. So I'm going to actually recut these things, this one here in particular, in half at least, to get better volume out of this crooked log. And as you can see, I've had to recut with a chainsaw a bunch of logs that got thrown on the pile and basically they weren't correct when I put them on the pile. They need to be recut. So I see that my battery is just about to run out, so I'm going to turn this off. Whoops. Turn this off and go get a fresh battery and keep going. Hold on. All right, welcome back. I don't know, it's just hard to disseminate all this information, but anyway, I'll try. So what we have here that I'm sawing up are white pine, eastern white pine. They're all trees that we pushed over and cleared out of this section of our land, and they're going to become part of parts for our new horse barn. So it's all softwood. I'm sawing all softwood, and to get through that pile over there, I'm sawing them into cants, or into like 8x8s or 12x12s or something pretty large. And so what that is doing is basically you're allowing the surface of the sawn timbers to dry out, and there's no incentive for insects to lay their eggs on there because there's no moisture. Like here, they could bore through the bark, and there's under the bark is it's going to be nice and warm and moist under there, so that boring insects will get in there and have a field day in there. Get tipped over here. Here we go. So what I am trying to do is to, if I don't do anything, they're going to turn what's called blue. They're going to blue stain, which is a fungus. It's an early onset of rot. Doesn't really, but it doesn't affect the quality of the logs or lumber. It only affects the visual. It will affect if you're going to paint them. But the boring insects is what I'm really concerned about. They'll get in here and you'll hear them munching away on this thing once the temperature gets up above 70 degrees. And to avoid that, like I said, if you saw them into boards or framing material or timbers, the surface dries out, and that's not a problem. They'll keep for quite a long time. So that's what I'm attempting to do, is to get through this pile. I'm not attempting to do the final sawing of most of this parts. But I have a running cut list in my head of what I need to get out of certain lengths. So I think that's a, let me measure it. I think it's a 12-footer. No, it's a 14. So I'm going to just saw this into an 8x8. I'm going to get an 8x8 out of there, out of the middle, and a bunch of stuff out of the outside. I'm trying to get 2x8s for floor joists that need to be at least 12 feet long. So if I can get 2x8s outside of that 8x8, and then boards on top of that, that's the kind of the goal. So you're gonna, whatever you're sawing, you have to, it depends on what you want to get out of it. If I'm going to get, I could potentially get a few 12-inch stuff. So maybe I wanted 12-inch boards. That what you want to get out of it is affects what you can get out of it, due to the taper or the sweep of the log, or even the quality of the log. I could have the same log full of giant knots in it, and I wouldn't cut beams or framing material out of it, because it just wouldn't be good enough. I'd probably just cut sheathing boards out of it. So anyway, so I'm cutting pine here, and I'm not sawing them anyway specifically, but round and round, cutting stuff off the outside. But if I was sawing hardwoods, hopefully you can see this. So say I was sawing red oak, and there's or oak. There's a viewer who's him and his father are buying a sawmill, and they're going to saw a bunch of red oak for their barn. And so there's a couple techniques for sawing hardwoods, and depends on what you want to get out of it. Say I want to get a true quarter sawn red oak for like flooring or something. I would cut the log directly in half, and then set half of it aside, and then I would set this back up on the mill, and I would cut it like that, and I would set that quarter aside, and then I would proceed to cut a board off of here, and off of there, and off of here, and off of there, and then you have to throw this corner away. And basically you're getting boards with the grain going across that as much as possible. It's not perfect everywhere, but it's as much quarter, that's what they would call quarter sawn, or vertical grain. And this is very time consuming to do, but it gives you the most stable, the boards will shrink very little in this direction. Now, for the other way you can saw is called flat sawn, and it's basically you're sawing a square out of here, and every time you cut a board off of this side, the grain goes this direction. And these boards are very prone to cupping, and they would shrink quite a bit in this direction, and so they're not as stable. So, but if you're doing what's called sawing for grade, you would be doing flat sawn. You would continually be flipping the log. This is usually in hardwood. You would be continually flipping the log, sawing a board off of the best face, so that you get the highest quality, widest material out of the log. And the middle is usually full of knots and stuff. But so it's called sawing for grade, where you're just continually flipping the log round and round to get the best material off, regardless of the width of the board. Anyway, that is a quick tutorial on sawing, different kinds of sawing. But on this log here, we're just going to be, I guess you'd call it, it's not even sawing for grade, because I'm not continually flipping around, because I want to achieve in the inside an 8x8. All right, let's start sawing, and then I can do some more explaining. All right, I hope you can see this. So when we were looking at this end of the log, you could see that the pith is not in the center. And that is an indication that the tree was leaning, and it was growing compression wood and probably, let's see, it would be compression wood and tension wood on this side. So the tree is a good sign that the tree has some tension in it because of the way it was growing. Now, if it was right in the center, it's a good indication that it is growing perfectly straight, and there's a lot less tension in there. So if I'm gonna saw boards out of a log that has the pith off center or even way off center, those boards are more than likely you're gonna have a hard time getting them to stay flat, so, or not twist or so whatsoever. So the first step I would do on this log, I know I want to get an 8x8 out of it, is I'm going to measure, let's see here, let's tip you back a little bit. I'm going to see how, so it looks like I could get about a 14-inch piece out of here. I could start at 14 inches. But like I said, this needs to come up with the toe board to take care of some of that taper. So let's take care of that right now. It's going to get noisy. So you see the toe board here has raised this part of the log up. Now this is kind of a thing you do by eye. In a commercial mill, they would be doing this with lasers. A computer would probably project what you want to get out of it, out of the log, and it would all be done, you know, not manually, not like this, and probably a lot more accurate. But so anyway, I've got, looks like there's no shame in coming back to measure the log, because what you're trying to do is get the most material out of it, and this isn't a race. I know I've got a lot to do, but it's still not a race. So I'm pretty happy with the way this is on the mill at the moment. This has been raised up, and I see I still gotta push it over till it hits this dog here. But the very first cut I'm gonna do it's called the opening face. And so what I'm trying to achieve is, when I take the slab off the top, is to have at least 4 or 5 inches exposed down here. And of course, it's because of the taper that it's going to get bigger. So if I was if this was a very nice log and I want to try to get the most I can out of it, I would be trying to have a 4-inch opening face, because I can get 1x4s out of that. But I don't mind slabbing this a little bit heavy, just because of the amount of stuff I have to do. So that's what we're going to do. Let's see here. That's not going to come around all the way. So I'm actually going to make my first cut. It looks like Oh, let's try 15 3/4. Now it looks a little too high to me, so don't be afraid to readjust. It looks, to my eye, it was just this end of the log wasn't up high enough. So I raised it up, and then I raised the mill up to 16 inches. This mill also comes with a debarker on it, which travels in front of the saw blade, cutting a thin groove in front, knocking off all this sand. I used to, on my old mill, which I didn't have a debarker at the beginning, I would go along with an axe, and very time consuming, cut all that stuff off, but it made the blade life a lot longer. So I would say if you get a mill, one other thing, even if you can get a debarker with it, it's very helpful and saves a lot of time. So this is a little bit heavier than I wanted, but not too bad. Oops, let's see here. Let's get these. So that would be called the opening face. And as you see, it gets narrower here and it gets wider down there because of the taper of the log. So what you're really trying to achieve is to have this the minimum size you want. If you want to get 1x4s out of it, then I should have raised the blade up a little higher. I don't mind taking a little bit off of here. We'll still get anyways, this is the sawyer's call as to how much you're going to take off on these first two cuts. Now I'm actually going to rotate the log now. There we go. I'm going to rotate the log now, but some people, I tend to saw around the log. So I'm going to saw here, then on this side, and then come around. And if you do it right, you never have to come back. Oops, you never have to come back to this side. To be the most efficient, you want to just travel around once, and then that's it. You'll get everything you want out of it. But some people cut this side and they flip it 180 degrees and they saw on that side. Anyways, it's a complete preference. It's the sawyer's preference. So I would say I'm going to rotate this next. I'm going to leave the toe board where it is because I know this has a bunch of taper in it, and I will measure it and maybe have to adjust that next. right, I would say the next critical thing in sawing is to get, if your mill is set up correctly, the log should actually be touching all the way down so that you know that you're going to form a square surface to this. It'll be 90 degrees. The next cut will be 90 degrees to this. So it's very critical that you make sure that that is touching the whole way around. Otherwise you're going to saw stuff that's at a square, which, you know, maybe it doesn't matter, but I'm trying to get square timbers out of this. So very it's something to definitely keep an eye on. All right, I'm going to take a look at the taper, and it looks to me like this end is way too high. Can you see that? Looks like this end is way too high, so I'm going to lower that toe board down, and we'll come back out and measure it. So I'm happy with that. Let's make the second cut. That was a little bit high, as you can see when I take off this slab. Let me get the slab out of the way here. You can see the log isn't perfectly straight, so we've got a little bend up here. If I'm really trying to get as much out of this as I can, now I'm going to take a 1-inch, while it's set up here, I'm going to take one more board off of this. So I'll set the saw for 1 1/8 because there's 1/8 of an inch kerf, and I'll cut off one more, and I'll edge that back at the end of the sawing. I'll edge all of these pieces with bark on them. So let's take one more cut on this side. All right, so I know that I want to get an 8x8 out of this. So I really want this face to be at least 8 inches. That's kind of what I'm aiming for, is an open face on here that's at least 8 inches. I know I've got to take more off of this face eventually, but these two faces are really set you up for what you're going to get out of the log. If you mess up on these two faces, you're definitely, it affects the outcome of the next two faces that you're going to cut. So I'm going to flip the log. I'm going to flip the log, and I'm going to take the put the toe board completely down, so this face is laying on the bed all the way down. So that's the next step. Let's flip it around. Of course, I wouldn't be turning the mill on and off while I'm doing this. It would all happen, but you can't hear what I'm talking. You can't hear me with the mill running. So you can see this toe board is down, and if you look underneath, oh, it's actually not hitting up here. You see that? So that indicates it's either something under the log holding it up, or the log has is starting to release some of its tension in it, and it's starting to bend. So what I'm going to do, and which is nice about this mill, is I can go back and raise both of these toe boards, lifting the whole log up, and check to see if there's any debris on these the bed here, to make sure that the log is sitting down flat. And then after that, we're going to set it back down on the bed, and then comes the real thinking part, because we want to end up with 8 inches in the middle. So and I want to try to get some 2x8s out of this if I can. So I'm looking at this going 8 inches, 2 1/8. Oh, excuse me. It will be 10 1/8. 12 1/4. So if I can get 12 1/4 all the way down, that means I can get a 2x on either side off of this. But down here, oh, going all over the place here, 12 1/4. I might be able to get a board off of this as well. So that would be 13 3/8. So if I look down here, yeah, I could probably get a 13 3/8 out of that. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about in my head, is I want to end up with taking a board and a 2x off of each side, and left with an 8-inch piece in the middle. So let's clean off the beds, and then we'll take a cut at 13 3/8. So you can see at 13 3/8, I couldn't get another 1-inch board out of there. I couldn't do 14 1/2. So that's really, like I say, this is the thinking part of it. And every log that you come to is going to be different. So let's take the slab off. Let me grab the tape measure. So I want to try to get a 2x8 out of this, and I don't care if there's a little, can you see that? I don't care if there's a little bit of wane on it. For the most part, I can get an 8-inch 2x8 out of that. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the next cut on here is going to be 2 inches down, and I'll push this one off, and then this face is done. I'll get a 2x8 off of here, and what's left is going to be the edge of the 8x8 timber. So let's make that next cut, get that off of here, and we'll flip it to the next side. So what I'm leaving out is, on this surface here, I know I couldn't, this has more wane on it. I want to be able to take the 1-inch board and the 2-inch board off of this face to get me into this clear material, into the flat surface. If there was more wane on this surface up here, I know I have an inch board and two 2-inch boards to take off. So I can take off, I can take it off in any combination. I can take it all off the top or split it up however I want. So what seems to make sense on this is I'm going to take the 2-inch board off of here, and then this surface will be done. And that's really up to you. You're going to have to do a bunch of sawing to figure out what works. All right, there's that 2-inch board, and you can see I can get a 2x8 out of this when I put it back on the mill to resaw. And we end up with a little bit of bark on this cut, but I am going to make a cut here, which will clean up this edge here. Now, this is a full 2 inches. If this log didn't quite allow it, I could do an 1 3/4 would have been okay. If you buy stuff at the lumber yard, it's been planed down to 1 1/2 inches, but I want to get full 2-inch stuff if I can. So let's get this one off of the mill, off there. And this is a chance to take a look at this face, and it's pretty good. I really want to have knots that are less than 2 inches around. That really does make the grade so that I can use it in the building. If they had really big knots or spike knots, at this point you may even change your mind and cut it into boards. But this is good enough quality for timber framing. So this face is done. I'm not coming back to this face. It's wide enough to get an 8x8 out of. So I'm going to flip it to the last face, the fourth side, and we'll take some off of there. Now I can see I've got wane and bark on this side, so I know that I'm going to take a 2-inch piece off of here, which will clean this edge up, and I want to end up a nice clean edge with no wane if I can. Some logs that are very close to some logs, you just end up having to have some wane on it just to get what you want out of it, and a little bit's all right, but if I can get rid of that, I'm going to do it. So in my thoughts, I'm going to end up with 2 inches and 8 inches. So it's the final cut for the 8x8 up here is going to be 10 and a quarter, or excuse me, 10 and an eighth, and then whatever else I can get beyond that. So let's flip it and take a look at it. I'm gonna do the measuring at the spot that's the lowest, which would be right here. No sense in measuring up there because that's gets even wider. So I know I wanted to get an 8-inch piece out of it, and then I want to get a 2-inch piece, so it's 2 and an eighth, so that's 10 and an eighth. And it looks like I can get 12. I can get another 2-inch piece and maybe a board, which would be 13 and an eighth. I think 13 and an eighth is too much. So, I mean, excuse me, 13 and 3/8. So 12 and a quarter looks like all that I can get out of this. There's going to be a little bit more weight on here. Yeah, let's cut it at 12 and a quarter. And then we're going to take, while the mill's running, we're going to take another cut for that 2x8 off of here. Welcome back. I apologize. I seem to have lost the tech gremlins. Seem to have eaten the last video I shot of finishing up this log. Basically, I ended up flipping it one more time, getting a 2x8 out of it, and then taking the 8x8 off of the mill and edging the remaining boards. And you'll end up seeing what I end up getting here in a minute. But I also wanted to mention that the mill, any mill you get, is capable of doing more than just boards or timbers, because on this mill I've sawn tapered pieces, I've sawn octagons, I've clamped burls to the mill and cut them in half. And it's really up to your imagination what you can do with the mill. So, you know, there you go.
find something interesting to saw and put it on the mill, secure it really well, and
you can do amazing things with your sawmill. So get back to the video. We're going to finish it up, and I hope you experiment and use your mills and get lots of wonderful lumber out of them. So there you have it. Sorry about the missing video. All right, I'm finished filming this on my old camera, so you probably can notice the difference. Anyways, I wanted to show you what I ended up with out of that log. Hopefully you can see this. So we got 8x8 timber is what I was aiming for. We've got 4 2x8s, which are going to be floor joists, and they're going to be cut down to 12 footers. We've got a couple 1-inch boards and some stickers out of it for stacking the lumber pile. Now this is what I was trying to get out of this log, but there's all kinds of other things you could have gotten out of it. I could have gotten all boards. I could have gotten, you know, it just is your imagination as to what you could get out of it. So every log that I'm sawing goes through this thought process of what I should be getting out of it, what I can get out of it, what the quality of it is. And some of the logs actually get rejected. As you can see over there, those are all rejects. They're just they have too many defects in them. They're not straight, they're too small. Whoops. They're not straight, they're too small. That one's got a split right up the middle of it. They're not, you could put them on the mill and get something out of them, but it's really, for me, it's a waste of time. You just got to draw the line somewhere, and those logs aren't valuable enough to attempt to get anything out of it. My mill will saw, you know, you can saw really short stuff, so I could cut those to 5-footers or something and put them on the mill. But like I say, I've got plenty of wood. Hold on, I got plenty of wood, and that's just not an issue. So anyway, there's the rest of the log pile, and every one of these logs, depending on the quality, length, size, it's going to be cut into something different. So there's thinking. This is a thinking thing. Oh, and very last thing here is I'll show you. These are all the slabs from that one log. So we've got that material and the slabs, and these will eventually be burnt in a burn pile. So there is waste. It's just trying to get square stuff out of round stuff. You just can't help it. You just try to keep it to a minimum, and there you go. I'm sure I missed a bunch of stuff. Everybody's going to saw a little differently. You're going to have to find a technique that works for you, and it also depends on what you're sawing. You know, hardwood, beams, lumber. You're sawing for someone else, they have specifications, what they want. So, and there you have it. I hope this is slightly helpful, and I hope you get out there and make some sawdust, because it can be very rewarding to see you start opening up a log. Every log's different, and some of them can be just amazing. Trees are amazing things. So anyways, and I end up with all the sawdust, which I just throw in a pile out in the woods because it's too fine to use for our animals. All right, thanks for watching. This has been a very long video. Too long, I think, but then there's stuff that I probably forgot to put in. So thanks again for watching. Please leave a comment if you feel like it, and give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. My channel, it's the only way my channel grows, is from people participating. So one last thing before I go: if you have requests, you want me to show certain things, leave a comment. I try to respond to them. with the help of my wife, because she's the computer person. And there you go. Thanks again for watching. See you later.